want to really delve into tonight, Tony, is obviously you've worked with a lot of talented goalkeepers, but I want to really talk about kind of like the mental and psychological side of goalkeeping with you, and kind of the traits that you've seen in these world-class goalkeepers that you've worked with. So just to give a quick introduction to Tony, 193 professional appearances.
Yeah, I think league appearances, and then add cups onto that at various levels of the game. So, it was a 23-year playing career at professional level.
Yeah, UEFA Cup winner.
Yep.
So, obviously a huge honour there. Former England youth goalkeeper coach, Tottenham first team goalkeeper coach, Aston Villa, Norwich. You're currently, as we've just spoken about, the academy goalkeeping scout for Manchester United as well. So, as I say, what I want to really delve into is the mental side, the psychological side of goalkeeping.
Sure.
So, just first of all, could you give us a little bit of insight into your playing career?
Well, I started very luckily. I had a year at Queen's Park Rangers when I was 11 and didn't particularly like my first insight into professional football. It didn't go particularly well for me. And then I had an opportunity to go to Tottenham when I was 12 years of age. And that kind of just opened my eyes up to what it was like to be at a really professional club with good coaching and excellent players around you, and the ability to add a pathway through the system there. So I went from the age of 12 from a schoolboy. When I left school, I became an apprentice, which is now a YTS. And from there, I signed as a professional. I was made the late, great Ray Clemence's number 2. Unfortunately, Ray passed away a couple of weeks ago, but probably one of my top 5 all-time goalkeepers. So I was number 2 to Ray Clemence when I was 16 years of age. And made my debut for Tottenham in the league when I was 18. And by the time I was 21, I'd played probably quite a few first-team games, culminating in, like you say, winning the UEFA Cup in a penalty shootout. And that was probably the highlight of my career, working my way through the system, getting to the top, and then not quite having, as we're going to move into, the psychological, the bit between your ears, the most important part of being able to stay at the top. The brains, the foresight, all of the things that you need to put together to be able to stay and maintain a career. So, I maintained a career in professional football for 23 years, up and down, and I went back into the then, which is now the Premier League. I had some time at West Ham and at QPR, but I played up in Scotland in the Premier League up there, but never really fulfilled the potential that I had as a goalkeeper, mainly because psychologically I didn't deal with success very well. And that then leads on to the disappointment of not fulfilling your potential. But equally, when I decided to quit playing around about the age of 39 and start my coaching badges, it gave me a great opportunity to take all of what I'd not done as a player and make sure that I didn't make the same mistakes as a coach. And when I'm looking at goalkeepers, when I'm looking for goalkeepers, when I'm coaching goalkeepers, they're the main traits that I look for, is the mental strength of a goalkeeper.
Yeah. So obviously you mentioned Ray Clemence, obviously legend in his own right there. Did you also have an opportunity to work with Pat Jennings for a year at Spurs?
I was an incredible story. I was 12 years of age, and I don't know if the clubs still do this. On school holidays, we used to go in the schoolboys and train at the training ground. Pat Jennings, again, still a great friend. Still speak to him now, but genuinely one of the all-time great goalkeepers. And again, in my top 5 would be probably number 1 or number 2. he would be around the place training with the first team, and he would come over every now and again, and you would be in the company of greatness, and that kind of rubs off. And looking up at people like that is having people to look up to and see what it takes to get to where they've got is inspirational at times, I think.
Yeah. So obviously you mentioned on your part the psychological side. Was there anything that you took from the likes of Ray and Pat that set them apart? Is there anything that really pushed them on to the levels that they got to?
I think the way that you deal with setbacks, so whether that be injuries, whether that be a loss of form, or whether that be mistakes in a game, is how you move on. And the very best goalkeepers tend not to worry too long about those types of things. They have a way of compartmentalising them. For you lads that are playing in goal now, and at any age, you'll see first-team goalkeepers in the Premier League making mistakes. But what you'll do at younger age group is you'll have an inconsistency in terms of your form. You'll play well one week and not play so well the next week. And that's all part of your development. And you can't improve unless you make, I don't like the word mistakes, but unless you make mistakes, you can't move forward, because you have to learn when that situation arises again for you in goal, and you'll see it and you'll recognise it. And good goalkeepers will recognise that and recognise why they made the mistake previously and be able to put that right. I think those guys were top of the tree when it came to, if we take Ray Clements, for instance, as a player, he came to Tottenham as a multi-award-winning, probably the most decorated English goalkeeper in the history of the game, played for Liverpool, 2 European Cups, a UEFA Cup, 5 league titles, FA Cups, and everything. But there was a period in his career at Tottenham that he kind of, I think, rested on his laurels, went backwards a little bit, didn't really feel put under any pressure for his place, and lost his form. And he had to deal with a crowd that turned against him really for a period of time at Tottenham, and the adulation that he would receive from the Liverpool fans, he'd never come across the difficulty in dealing with a set of supporters that were against him. But it didn't affect him. He got back to work, he worked hard, he put it behind him, and he went and showed that group of people that were booing him or asking for him to be left out of the team why he should stay in the team. And it's little things like that. It's being able, it's mental toughness. At the very top level, there's ability. Is the ability of all the goalkeepers in the Premier League, professional football, even at the ages where you guys play, you'll look down the other end at another goalie and think, he's a good goalkeeper, he makes good saves, he does this, he does that. So your abilities are kind of quite close. You'll be good at some things and not so good at others, and vice versa from the goalie at the other end. But what really sets people aside is their mental toughness to deal with adversity and mistakes and bounce back and carry on and move forward.
Brilliant. So jumping forward quite a bit, going from kind of your playing career into your coaching career, left Halifax in 2002, and jumped straight into the England youth setup. How did you kind of find that transition from playing to coaching?
Well, I think at the time I was finishing my playing career in the lower leagues. My playing career wasn't filled with the riches that a professional footballer's career is filled with today. And so the fact that I needed to work after quitting football was essential. What else did I know? Not a lot else. What else did I think I was good at? Football. So decided to start taking my qualifications and was offered a brilliant opportunity in my first coaching job at Halifax to be goalkeeping coach of the first team, run the centre of excellence goalkeeping side of it for them, and I did that for a couple of seasons, and it was really an invaluable experience and a really good apprenticeship in terms of starting out as a coach early in my career and at the same time gaining my qualifications.
So was there anything that you kind of took over? What did you from your playing career into your coaching career? What was the transfer of skills or?
Yeah, look, I think when I first started coaching, I was still pretty active, still pretty healthy, and obviously I was still able to demonstrate a really, really high level what I wanted especially young goalkeepers to do. But I think I touched on it before. The one thing I didn't do as a player was deal with the mental side of the game. And I was determined to make sure that wouldn't hamstring me again and be a problem for me in my coaching career. So I like to think that I'd grown up and developed the mental skills to be able to cope with the pressures and the problems that come along for goalkeeping coaches, really.
So was that something that you were able to pass on to the goalkeepers that you were working with as well? Obviously, in terms of youth level, you're working at the highest level in England, working with, I've got a few written down here, like Joe Hart, Tom Heaton, Paul Robinson, the likes of them. What were you able to pass on to them in terms of that?
Look, I think, you can almost, because I'd kind of seen the pitfalls that I'd had, the adulation that you get from a young age playing in Tottenham's first team, the opportunities that you get to do stuff outside of football that can affect your football. You can offer that advice. I don't suppose it's any different from you guys listening to me now. You know, your mums and dads or your older siblings, if you have them, would be saying to you, here's some advice. It's up to you if you take it. I've got a 35-year-old son. I've also got a 7-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old daughter. My 7-year-old daughter, Lily, thinks that she knows everything, and I can't tell her anything because she just doesn't listen. She always knows best. But I don't think that should stop me from trying to give her advice in terms of where I think she might need some help. And that would have been the same for goalies. And that'll be the same for you guys with your coaches and your parents. And, again, going back to the psychological side of it, the very best goalkeepers will take advice on board. It's not always advice that will suit you, but if you listen to advice and digest it and work out if it can or if it can't help you. If it can't help you, you have to find a way to explain to the person giving it that that's not particularly going to do my career any good or my life any good. But when people give advice, by and large, I find that they're coming from the right place. They're coming from a place where they want the best for you, and that certainly would apply to your parents and your coaches. So advice from people that love you and care about you is always worth listening to. And you then have to, as individuals, because I don't think people give young people enough credit for how clever they are, you have to digest what part of that advice would be beneficial to you and your career and your lives moving forward.
So working with obviously some of the younger goalkeepers in the England youth setup, was there anything that you've seen from any of them that would suggest that they would go on to potentially play at the highest level, either internationally or first team?
Well, I think I'll give you two examples of, for me, very, very, very good goalkeepers at the highest level. So I saw Joe Hart play when he was 14 for Shrewsbury, and he absolutely wowed me from the moment I saw him play. He played with a maturity. He had a good presence in the goal, and he just looked like a goalie that was going to go all the way and have success and be a top goalie. And that one almost is quite easy to spot. Then you look at someone like a Tom Heaton, who in the England setup for a lot of time moving through the years was a number 2, wasn't always regarded as the number 1 goalie in the year group. But there was something about Tom that was what we've just spoken about. He listened. He listened to his club coaches. He listened to what was happening on international duty. He also learned by watching other goalkeepers and what they did well and what they didn't do well and what he could add from the good and the bad of their game to his. And when you see someone put that much hard work in, you know he's going to be a pro and he's going to be a professional footballer at some level. It took him a little bit longer than Joe to get to the level that he's at now, which is a Premier League goalkeeper. But, you know, there's more than one way to get there, and he thoroughly deserved to end up where he ended up, which was playing Premier League football at a very high standard and being involved in England squads at senior level.
Yeah, no, I totally agree on Tom. I think he's an outstanding goalkeeper. Probably doesn't get some of the plaudits he does deserve.
Yeah, I think you kind of. I think at the moment there's a trend in goalkeeping, and I genuinely don't want to undermine any goalkeeper that plays. It's a difficult position. It's very easy to make mistakes. It's very easy to be criticised for what goals go in, and it always seems to be the goalkeeper's fault. But I think the goalkeeper that I'm looking for is that type of goalkeeper, that unassuming. You know he's going to get you out of trouble when you need him to. It's not going to be done in a flash way. It's not going to be done flamboyantly. And if you go back through the years, you know, if you go back, and all of the top goalkeepers have that quality of calmness, and people look behind them when they're playing and they know that he's there, and we're safe with him behind us. That's the goalkeeper that you're looking for, rather than that goalie that wants to keep rushing out of his goal and being part of everything that's going on all of the time. Because when you go looking for trouble, invariably you find it, and that's when mistakes happen.
I think that moves us on quite nicely to the next question. So 2008, you got the Tottenham first team role, and in your first year you had Aurelio Gomez.
Yes.
So how was it dealing with obviously a foreign goalkeeper coming to England? Probably had a little bit of a tough time when he first came. Might possibly a little bit of a language barrier there. What did you see in him, and how did he overcome some of the obstacles that were in his way?
I think what you try to do is as much homework on the personality as you can. I knew he was a decent goalkeeper from his time at PSV Eindhoven. But what people don't realise about Gomez, he didn't start playing in goal until he was 18 years of age. And he was 4 years later playing in the Dutch top league and playing for Brazil's national team. And everything came really quickly, and he wasn't. He is a brilliant athlete, fantastic flexibility and agility. But Gomez is really quite fragile when it comes to his mental capacity. He needs an arm around his shoulder. He needs people to tell him how good he is constantly to bring the best out of him, which is fine. And when he came to Tottenham, you get chucked into a league that is 100 mile an hour quicker than what you're used to. I didn't feel that he was physically fit enough for the Premier League when I went to Tottenham. I didn't think that the sports science at the club took goalkeepers seriously enough to make sure that they were doing the relevant tests that they do with outfield players. And a lot of Gomez's problems came in games that he played really well for 75 or 80 minutes. And he'd make a mistake in the 85th or the 80th minute that would cost Tottenham the win. And when we dug deep into it, he was going into games dehydrated. He's Brazilian. He loves to drink coffee. He loves to drink espresso coffee, which dehydrates you quite badly. He wasn't drinking enough fluids before a game. So in the last 10 minutes, when he's dehydrated, his concentration levels would dip. invariably, when you're not concentrating properly, you make mistakes. So we worked a lot on his physical fitness. We worked a lot on hydration, especially the day before and the day of games. And slowly but surely built a relationship between the two of us where he trusted me, to the point that my own son said I treated him more like a son than I treated him, which was quite funny. But there was a real good working relationship built around trust. And I think probably the season 2009-2010, the season we qualified for the Champions League for the first time in the club's history, was he had a real top season that season. He was a major reason that we qualified for the Champions League, and allied the newfound fitness and the newfound concentration levels to the natural ability that guy had. And yeah, he was a top goalkeeper and a top person.
So how did he kind of in the first season deal with those setbacks mentally? Obviously, I know you've spoken about the physical. You've looked at his fitness, you've looked at his nutrition. So I know it would kind of destroy a lot of goalkeepers, making mistakes, costing the team games, what have you. What was his mentality like going into training the next day or going into view the analysis? What was he like in that sense?
He would walk into the training ground, shoulders hunched, head down, very disappointed with life in general in England. You have to remember, at PSV Eindhoven, he was adored by the public. They loved him. They named a burger in one of their bars after him, and the kids just loved him. He lived next door to a school in Holland, and the kids would come home from school and sit on his doorstep, and he would sit and sign autographs. He's a genuinely lovely guy. He's got time for everyone, always signs autographs. But he kind of had this, he had this thing where if someone went near him and he went over on the pitch, he looked like he was crying, he looked like he was in pain all the time. And we had to kind of rebuild an image for him, and he had to be part of that. And I think he was close to breaking, to be perfectly honest. I think he was close to saying, maybe the Premier League's not where I should be. But, you know, like I say, we worked really well together, and probably 6-8 months later, we brought in Carlo Cudicini from Chelsea, who was a real big help in terms of how strong you need to be as a character to perform in goal in the Premier League. They became good friends and they worked hard together, and so you're now forming a goalkeeping kind of group of people that can help each other out when times get tough. So you kind of take the best of Cudicini, and Gomez starts to put that into his game and believe in himself, and his shoulders went back and his chin went up and his confidence grew, and the supporters began to kind of rally round and think, yeah, he is the goalkeeper that we thought he was going to be. So he rebuilt himself with the help of a lot of other people, really.
Brilliant. So kind of, obviously his first season was a little bit shaky. Second season, he's done really well. Third season, he's been more consistent. Fourth season, Brad Friedel comes in.
Yeah, we have some kind of we had Carlo Cudicini come in first. Unfortunately for Carlo had a really serious road traffic accident, and the doctors told him he probably wouldn't walk again. And Carlo did a lot of work around rehabilitation for about a year, forced his way back into playing, eventually played in the Premier League again for Tottenham and the semi-finals of the FA Cup for Tottenham, but was never really going to be able to sustain a full season of playing week in, week out with the injuries that he'd picked up. And Brad Friedel became available for transfer on a free transfer from Aston Villa. And when he came into the club, I think where we might go with this is when it comes to, for any goalkeeping coaches, not so much the lads that are goalkeepers, but the coaches, this is where it becomes really important not to become overly friendly with people. You have to maintain a real working relationship, because somewhere along the line, disappointment is going to have to be spoken about and dealt with by yourself and the goalies. So I have to remember who pays my wages is the football club. I have to remember who's in charge of the team is the manager. And my loyalty, first and foremost, has to be to the manager. And when Harry Redknapp decides that he wants to play Brad Friedel, that's the manager's choice. Whether I agree with it is immaterial. But again, Friedel came in on the back of a wealth of experience in the Premier League, one of the top goalkeepers in Premier League history, not the most gifted technically, but again, mentally, very, very strong, typically American, big, strong self-belief, and forced his way into the team. And shortly after that, Harry Redknapp left and Andre Villas-Boas took over. And the goalkeeper at the time was Brad in the team, and Villas-Boas went with that and didn't really feel that Gomez was his type of goalkeeper. And again, that's something that as a goalkeeping coach you have to deal with. You have to deal with the disappointment of Gomez, and you have to make sure that his training program and his well-being is looked after, and that falls on you as the goalkeeping coach.
So how did he react to that then? Obviously, you've got Carlo who's come in, he's vastly experienced, and you've got Gomez who's played for 3 seasons, and then all of a sudden he goes from playing 30 plus games a year to none. How does that affect him, and how does it affect Carlo mentally? And did kind of Brad Friedel, when he come in, did he do anything to help that situation? And what kind of experience did he pass on to those goalkeepers?
I think what they did was had a professional respect for each other. I think as goalkeepers, when I look at you guys on the screens all looking, and when you go and play, it's very easy to criticise another goalkeeper about making a mistake, and I wouldn't have done this and I wouldn't have done that. The line is so thin between making a great save and making a real howler of an error, and guaranteed, the only thing that's guaranteed is that you will make mistakes. And so they had a real good professional working relationship. It was becoming a really good group. I had David Button, who's now at West Bromwich Albion, and I had Ben Anick, a guy from Sunderland, was where he started. So I had a good group of goalkeepers of varying ages that pushed each other, didn't sulk, didn't worry about the situation. They fully understood that the manager picked the team, and if there was any problems, they needed to go and see the manager, which we laid out very early on. I can't tell Gomez why he's not in the team. He's got to go and ask the manager that. But if you want to train in my group, you have to commit yourself to 100% effort, and mentally you have to input into the group. And you can't sulk, and you can't drain energy from the group. So I think if you set those boundaries early, knowing that I have the final say, if I want one of those goalkeepers out of the group because they're not doing what I'm asking, the manager's going to back me. And they were very good like that, the goalies at Tottenham at that particular time. They were a fantastic group to work with.
Brilliant. So I know you've mentioned you had David Button and Ben Anick as well. What did they take from Brad Friedel, Carlo, and Aurelio Gomez? Do you think they passed on much to them?
I would say work ethic, empathy. So the knowledge that it's not easy. You don't get there just because you're talented. There's a lot more to it. I think they took how to behave away from football. Those 3 guys were really good professionals away from the football club. They lived their lives properly. They lived their lives in a fashion that gave them every opportunity to come in and train properly and play properly every day of the week. And when you work with people like that day in, day out, if you don't take something from that, then it's my job as the coach to either point that out to the player and give them a second chance to do that, or remove them from the group, like I say, because they're not investing properly into what's going on at the football club.
Yeah, Good. So obviously a year later, you've had Brad in for a year. He's following on the 3 years that Gomez had. You bring in Hugo Lloris. Obviously, you had a huge part in scouting him and recommending him to Villas Boas. What did you see in him at the time? He would have been a relatively young goalkeeper. What did you see in him other than obviously his technical ability that made you think he would be the right fit?
Lloris was a strange one because we were in a pre-season in America, and we'd just played Liverpool, and then we were moving down to New York to play Manchester City, and the chairman asked the manager and myself for a meeting and said that we needed to invest in a new goalkeeper, someone younger, someone for the future, someone that they could move on with. And Brad was, with all due respect to Brad, he was coming towards the end of his career. He probably only had another year or so before he moved on anyway. But Villas Boas wanted Martin Stekelenburg, and I knew Hugo Lloris from about the age of 16. It was when I first saw him play for France. He was an England coach, and I watched his progress through the French ranks, and then he was in the team at Lyon very early on at 17. Talented boy. And the way Tottenham played at that particular time suited Lloris's game: high press, push, leave the space behind, and he's quick off of his line, and he was my pick. And fortunately enough, the chairman decided to go and sign him. And then we had some real problems after that with Hugo, because the manager wouldn't put him in the team, and for about 6 months kept on playing Brad Friedel, and Hugo was getting frustrated. He was the captain of France. There was a European Championships on the horizon. People were talking in France that he would lose his place and lose his captaincy, and he wanted to leave. He couldn't quite work out why he'd been brought to Tottenham and used as the number 2. So that was a real problem for me at that particular time.
So obviously he's come in, he's got that mentality that obviously he's national team captain. He should be number 1. Was there anything that you've seen in training and how he conducted himself, obviously around yourself and around the manager, that really made you look at him and go, he's going to achieve great things?
Well, I think the thing with Hugo is I knew everything that I needed to know about him as a player when he came to the club. He impressed me more in training with his athleticism. He's not, when he's defending his goal, he's not the prettiest of goalkeepers, but he makes great decisions. He's calm. He stays fit. He plays lots of games. He very rarely misses games. That's important. And it was trying to keep him calm was my biggest job, really. Trying to say to him that, your time will come. We just need to get you ready so that when that game comes and you go in, you can prove that you're the best goalkeeper and you'll stay in the team. So that was really my job there. The problems came. There was some friction between himself, and there was a bit of a personality clash between Friedel and Lloris. They respected each other as goalkeepers, but they didn't really talk. But they never let that interfere with the group dynamic. They stayed away from each other in terms of socialising, whether it be in the players' lounge or in the dining hall after training. But I think deep down they had a mutual respect for each other, but they didn't really become friends in any way, shape, or form.
Do you think that's because they're both battling to be number 1?
Yeah, I think when you... So now I'm in a scenario as a goalkeeping coach where I've got 4 goalkeepers that all think they should be number 1. Only one can play. Carlo's probably resigned himself to the fact that he's probably, career after the accident, is never going to be challenging to play week in, week out. Gomez is probably at that point knows that he's going on loan to, I think it was not long after that he went on loan to Hoffenheim for a season and did very well there. So he was quite happy because he could see a move on the horizon for him. And now I've got these two goalkeepers that are like, I should be playing. No, I should be playing. No, and that's what you get when you get real, genuine professional footballers. They want to play. And when they don't play, they get upset, because the most important thing to them is the appearance, is the ability to show people how good they are. So, you know, you have to take that into account and deal with it the best you can. And hopefully it works itself out for the better.
Yeah. So obviously a lot of these goalkeepers at the moment playing grassroots, so they'll be the only goalkeeper in the team. But sometimes there's a point when a second goalkeeper comes in, and it might be a case that they're rotating or the manager favours the goalkeeper. Would you give the goalkeepers here any advice on kind of dealing with being a second choice goalkeeper, or dealing with not playing week in, week out?
Can I ask your goalkeepers just to stick your hands up if you're the regular starter for your teams? Can they do that? Start. So most of you are used to playing every week, and if a trialist, if another goalkeeper comes along and the manager says to you, "I'm going to play him for a couple of weeks," how do you feel about that? What does that make you feel like? Can they hear me, Stephen?
Oh, sure. Yeah, they can. Sorry, they're all on mute.
So
yeah,
go.
Our team, we actually have a second keeper, and the reason it was brought in because last year I actually dislocated my hip, and so I became the second choice keeper because I couldn't play. And then what I've done is really just put all my effort in training, showing like why I should be the main keeper. And over the few games that we've both been rotating, thankfully I've been chosen as the main keeper. So I've just focused on training. Really, that was what I did to make sure I got the.
That's a really good example of how to go about regaining your place in the team. It's saying to me that you've got belief in your own ability, and you're not going to be sidetracked by another goalkeeper, and you're going to prove to the manager visually by your training, your attitude, and everything that you're a better goalie and you should be in the team. If I can go back to when I was your age, when that sort of thing happened to me, I used to take it too personally. I used to become withdrawn, not speak to coaches, get the sulk with my mum and dad, because I could never really quite understand why I wasn't playing. But I think the older you get, that you realise that you do need challenges, and that is a first class attitude. I would also add to that, if you do not play and they play someone else, there's a way of finding out why you're not playing. Is asking the manager and the coaches, why am I not in the team? What do I have to do to get back in the team? How do I go about speaking, through maybe your mums or your dads, rather than sort of stamping your feet and sulking about not playing? Ask him why, because there might be a reason. It might be something as simple as, I just need to have a look at this goalkeeper because I'm thinking about bringing him in. You might not know his age. He might be coming in for next year's team when you move up, and things like that. So it's making sure that you keep a level head on your own ability and your own focus on what you need to do, rather than taking it away from your ability and making it about the other goalkeeper or the coach doesn't like me.
Yeah, great advice. I know obviously you had some time after Spurs you went to Aston Villa and Norwich City.
When I left Tottenham, I went to Norwich first of all.
Norwich, yeah.
And then
was there any challenges? Obviously, it would have been John Ruddy at the time.
Yeah, well, I think the challenge for them was Norwich at the time were trying to keep John Ruddy. John Ruddy, I think the previous season had been in every England squad, although he hadn't played, he'd been in every full England squad. I'd worked with John Ruddy in the England under-18s a few years back. So I knew John quite well. I think John's a very good goalkeeper and performs at a consistent level in the Premier League. And he'd done particularly well at Norwich. They were desperate to keep him. Not sure that John was 100% on board with staying and was maybe looking for a move, and they wanted someone to come in and kind of settle him down and get him going again and get him infused for the club again. I think that was easy for me because it was a new challenge for me. Going to a different club. They were in the Championship at the time, so John, they'd just been relegated, so John obviously was wanting to get back into the Premier League. So was I, and it was again a good working relationship. And he had I only stayed 8 months for that season before I moved on, but thoroughly enjoyed working with him and my time there. You know, so we both had a similar challenge. We both had come out of the Premier League into the Championship. We both wanted to get back into the Premier League, and how was we going to do that? We was going to do that. My stock in trade is to work hard in training, make it enjoyable, make it high tempo, and go out and enjoy yourself, give them the best opportunity to perform properly on a Saturday.
So obviously him dropping down into the Championship, maybe he's losing that opportunity with England. You spoke about him wanting to push for a move away. Did it affect him within training and within games and around the training ground, or did it change his attitude in a sense that he worked harder and he pushed himself a little bit more?
Yeah, I think the added bonus for me is you as a player, because I remember this, when a new manager comes in, people raise their game. New coach comes in, you raise your game. You want to show them how good you really are. So new coach, I'm the new coach. I come into the football club, and he obviously wants to show me how good he is, and he right from the outset was a model professional, very easy to get on with. I always give experienced goalkeepers the opportunity. I just say to them, let me show you for a week or so how I like to work and what I like to do, and my methods. And if there's anything within that you don't like, we sit down at the end of it and we discuss it. And if there's something that you particularly need that I haven't catered for, so it becomes a really good working relationship where the goalkeeper has to have an input, because at the end of the day, it's you guys that are going onto the pitch to play, not me. And so it really needs to be a two-way conversation on everything you do to get the best out of an individual to perform to the best of their ability.
Great. So obviously your coaching career spanned, what was it, 2002 to 2015, 16 when you left Villa?
Yeah.
Going into your role now as a goalkeeping scout for the academy at Manchester United, what can you take into that role, and what are you looking for from goalkeepers that you are kind of scouting?
I like goalkeepers that are effective, and sometimes that means it doesn't matter how you keep the ball out the net, just keep it out the net. I think we've become really obsessed in academy football, professional football in England, about technique and footwork and hands and this and that and all the pretty stuff. And we do so much technical work, but we don't know how to change that into game-related either practice or realism. The reality of a game is a goalkeeper's job is to keep the ball out the net. And if my goalkeeper can keep a clean sheet every week and the ball hits him on the forehead and goes over the bar, hits him on the elbow and goes around the post, he's doing his job. We're obsessed with footballers, and I think goalkeepers in the modern game have to be adequate passers of the ball. But if I take Hugo Lloris, for instance, Hugo Lloris' weakest point in his whole game is dealing with balls at his feet, because he's not a natural footballer, like Edison is at Manchester City, for instance. But he can keep the ball out the net, and that's his job, first and foremost. And so I think we're a little bit over-obsessed with the footballing goalkeeper rather than the effective goalkeeper. I think we get a little bit obsessed in terms of how tall you have to be a goalkeeper. Is he tall enough? Is he tall enough? He's not very big, is he? He's a bit small, isn't he? How good is he? Has to be the first question. How good is he? Is he effective in games? Games are the most important. I've seen lots of training ground, brilliant goalkeepers on the training ground that do not translate that onto playing fields when the game kicks off. So, yes, you have to work hard in training, but you get judged by your performances in games, and effective goalkeepers are the best goalkeepers for me.
So going back to obviously what you're seeing in the likes of Joe Hart, Tom Heaton when they were younger, the kind of things that you're seeing in Hugo Lloris, Gomez and Friedel in the professional game, is there anything kind of like psychologically or any kind of like psychological traits that you're looking for in younger goalkeepers when you're also looking at them obviously technically and tactically as well?
Yeah, self-belief. There's kind of there's a body language to it, and I think there's a confidence and a body language and a way you walk and present yourself on a pitch that you go, oh yeah, I quite like the look of that. There is a take responsibility mentality. So we've spoken about it. You will make mistakes. You don't have to stand there with your hand up saying, I'm really sorry. But it's done. It's finished. It's gone. But equally, you don't stand there saying, well, why didn't you do that? And why didn't you do that? And why didn't you do that? And shouting and screaming, and just take responsibility. You can deal with it in the dressing room after the game. Okay, I've made a mistake, but I'm a good goalkeeper, so I'm just going to carry on playing. So there's that kind of there's just a confidence in good goalkeepers and a self-belief that they don't have to keep being told that they're good goalkeepers. They tell themselves they're good goalkeepers, and that presents itself as a positive presence, really.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic there in terms of body language and belief and taking responsibility. It's all things that I kind of work by as well. So it's fantastic advice, and it's obviously great to hear it from somebody like yourself as well. So that's the end of kind of everything that I wanted to ask.
Are you all awake still? If I bored you.
All still there. I think it's from my point of view, I think it's been a fantastic insight to kind of like the elite level mentality.
Yeah, look, I was speaking to my wife earlier on today about it today, and I was I wasn't sure if it was young goalies, senior goalies, all coaches. I don't know, but I watched I read your message that you put out a few weeks ago asking for the likes of me to step up. Really, I think is what you're asking. Give something back, and I think what you're doing is brilliant because you're keeping people connected in a really, really difficult time. And when I was first starting out at coaching at the lowest end and of the professional ladder, I needed help, and I would reach out, and people help me. So, if there's something I can do to help coaches or young goalkeepers, then absolutely I need to make sure that I'm available for these sort of evenings. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, no, obviously really, really appreciate your time. Appreciate your insight. I think it's going to be invaluable to everybody that sees this and who hears it. I was just wondering, as I say, I'm conscious of time. I'm conscious of taking up too much of your time.
Don't worry.
Would you be open to fielding a couple of questions from the goalkeepers?
Yeah, for sure. No problem. That's all. Yeah, brilliant.
Brilliant. Cool. Thank you. So what you'll see is anybody that wants to ask a question, in the top right-hand corner, you'll see more with 3 dots. If you click on that, you should see raise hand. So if anybody has a question, if you could click on that, what we'll see that pop up. Oh, there we go. There's 2 straight away. Let's go with Harry first, please. So Harry, if if you would like to ask your question.
Yeah. Who was like the best player, like in general, like keeper or outfielder you've ever played with or worked with?
I think played with for sure would have been Glenn Hoddle. Probably don't remember him, but I was also lucky enough to play in a game with Diego Maradona. He guested in a game for Tottenham against AC Milan in a testimonial match. But I think I've been really lucky with my coaching career. I've been able to coach people like Hugo Lloris, who's a World Cup winning captain. I've been able to coach teams that have contained players like Gareth Bale and Luka Modric. So I'd probably say Luka Modric is as an outfielder is one of my all-time favourites. And I would have to say, you know, my favourite goalkeeper that I ever worked with was Aurelio Gomez, followed by Hugo Lloris, really.
Happy with that, Harry?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Next one, Stephen Waite.
Hey, Tony. Hi, Steve. I've got a couple of questions, actually.
Okay.
I'm going to chuck them both in. What age do you think academies should take goalkeepers away from grassroots football? Is the first one. And the second one is, what other coaches' sessions do you enjoy watching? I watch quite a lot of sessions. I wondered whose sessions you enjoyed watching.
Okay, so firstly, I don't think what age is the youngest goalkeeper that's listening in tonight? What have we got, Stephen? Would you know?
I think we're either looking at Dylan or Logan, I believe. So under nines, lads. Give us a thumbs up, Dylan, Logan, under nines. So you're looking at like 8, 9-year-old.
When at 8, 9 years of age, I just want you to play and go. I just want you to enjoy it. I don't want you to be taken away to professional clubs and given training programs and things like that, because I think that you take away the enjoyment of football in terms of growing up. And unfortunately, that's the way of the world now, that it gets younger and younger. They tell me that, you know, between the ages of 5 and 11 is your most, you're more capable of learning anything. So I understand why clubs do it. If it was my child, son or daughter, I've got 2 young daughters, and if they want to play football, then I'd want them to play the game and enjoy the game for as long as they possibly could before someone kind of brought them into that professional mentality. But to be a top performer now, you have to start at those young ages. All the sports would tally with that. You know, if you look at gymnasts, you know, they're starting at 5, 6 years of age, and it robs you of a childhood to a certain degree. But, you know, if it's a dream and it's there, I think you should still be allowed to play for your grassroots club once you're at a professional club, though. I do think that, Stephen. Genuinely, I do. And I don't understand why you can't, to be perfectly honest with you. And secondly, again, sorry, what was it?
Whose sessions do you like watching? Which other coaches?
So what I see a lot of now, I see a lot of stuff on things like YouTube. So I think there's 2 types. There's a goalkeeping trainer and there's a goalkeeping coach. And I like to watch goalkeeping coaches. What I see on YouTube is a lot of goalkeeping trainers that put down lots of fancy cones and hurdles and bells and whistles, and they dive over and under and round and through, and there's no coaching taking place. It's all kind of smoke and mirrors, if you like. And when I watch coaches, so if I said to you 2 cones, 1 ball, 1 goalkeeper and yourself, teach that goalkeeper 3 handling techniques, you're going to have to coach, because I've exposed you. I've given you nothing to hide behind. You see what I mean? So you've got to deal 1v1 with that goalkeeper, and every time he catches a ball or drops the ball, you're going to give him the advice on what type of technique he should be using, and then you iron out the technique from there. So I love watching coaches work. So Martin Thomas of the FA, shortly to retire, is probably as good a coach of goalkeepers as I've ever seen. The likes of Eric Steele, David Coles, all of those guys that are were Pat Mountain at Bristol City is a really top goalkeeping coach, because he goes into the detail of how, why, when to do stuff. And they all do that. So I would rather watch a goalkeeping coach than a goalkeeping trainer. And they would be the guys that I would pay to go and watch coach.
Brill. Cheers, Tony. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Do I have any more questions? Again, if you can see it, the raise hand button top right. There we go. I think Joe's looking for it. Is that right, Joe? Yeah, just pop yourself on. Yeah, there you go. Good luck.
What was your approach to facing penalties?
Okay, so it's a really funny question, Joe, because I'm probably, as a player, best known for saving 2 penalties in a penalty shootout in the UEFA Cup final. But unlike today, we didn't know anything about the opposition and what side they went and who was going to take them and things like that. So I had an approach that was, I was always pretty confident that out of 5 penalties, I could save 1. And I would try and look at the centre forward's eyes just before he was going to strike the ball, and more often than not, guess which way to dive. Today is slightly different in that you can get a lot of information, and you can give goalkeepers much more information about where players like to put penalties. But for me, it's still there's still a lot of guesswork when you save penalties. So for me, I used to try and look at the striker and then hopefully guess based on where he was looking, and I would then dive that way and hope that he hit the ball that way and not so well, and I would save it.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Tom, do you want to pop yourself off mute?
I was playing futsal at a high level with Newcastle United for a couple of seasons. Now I've left that sport to go into football.
Okay.
How do you handle going from quite a high level to a quite significant drop in standard?
Well, you have to take what you've learned from that high level, and you have to take that with you. You can't drop your standards because you've dropped to a lower standard, for sure. But if you look at probably Edison at Manchester City, his formative years were in futsal. I think it gives you an advantage, Tom. I genuinely have to say that, because I think it gives you an advantage in the modern world of understanding how to pass, the touch, the movements, the reactions that are needed in that. And so it's not to worry that you've dropped to a lower standards. It's about not dropping your high standards that you've set yourself at the level that you've left, and take that level into the level that you're going to, and then marry the two together. And if people see that your standards are higher, you hopefully drag their standards up. And if not, you'll stand out, and someone from a higher standard will take you to the next level that you want to go to in 11v11 football.
Thank you.
Steve Brass.
Evening, Tony.
Hello.
How we doing?
Good, thanks.
Couple of questions for you, Tony. One for the playing side, for the goalkeepers, and then one on coaching. Just even in grassroots, there tends to be quite a lot of movement for the goalkeepers going from team to team.
Yeah.
What would you suggest for the young goalkeepers? Would you suggest them to go and play for a good team who's playing at the top of the league, or a poor team so they get a lot more actions to do in the game? From your role as a scout at Man United, where do you think would best suit them?
Well, look, whatever happens as a goalkeeper, you need to be able to deal with a game that you don't see a lot of the ball in terms of your concentration and focus. But equally, you have to play in games where you're single-handedly keeping your team in it. What you will find out about goalkeepers at the younger end is that they're okay when the team's winning, but when they get that heavy defeat, they don't want to play in goal anymore. And it's kind of making sure that you, as a coach, can continue the development of a player who's in a team that's not so good. How do you do that? Do you move them on? Do they stop playing in goal because they're upset? Is a difficult one. But you have to analyse what's going on for them in terms of the goals that they're conceding. If they're conceding a lot of goals and it's their fault, then it's your job as a coach to try and the outfield coach to try and make the team better to help the goalie. And it's your job as a coach to give the goalkeeper new tools to be able to keep the ball out the net. So I think it's almost an unanswerable question, because there might not be another team for that goalkeeper to go to. That might be the only game that goalkeeper can get. So you have to keep his interest high as a coach. You have to keep him coming back week in, week out by not worrying about goals going in. You know, you kind of set different parameters for him to walk off the pitch feeling that he's performed well. You can analyse the goals and point out the fact that absolutely not your fault. And so it's a goal that you just need to chalk off to experience, because there's nothing you can do about it now, and there's nothing you probably can do about it next week. The ones that you can save, we'll work harder on at making sure when that happens again, you can save them. So I think, do you move them on? Don't you move them on is an impossible question to answer, just because there might not be anywhere to move on to other than I'm not playing in goal anymore, you know.
Brilliant. Just on the coaching side, Tony, obviously in a lot of coaching circles, there's a belief that you can't be a top level coach if you haven't played at the top level of the game. I just wonder, what's your opinion on that, especially as goalkeeping coaching goes?
Yeah, well, I think it's a nonsense. I do believe that you have to have played in goal, genuinely. I think you come with a knowledge then of the difficulties of the position. You play in goal and you see a totally different picture. When I look at coaches and managers shouting and screaming from the touchline on the halfway line, looking back at a goalie, telling the goalie what they think he should be doing, he's seeing it from one perspective, whereas the goalkeeper's seeing a totally different picture. So it's I think you have to have played in goal, and I think you have to love playing in goal, but it doesn't matter at what level you've played in goal. I think it's a nonsense to think that you look, one of the best coaches in the country for me is David Coles. David Coles was a very, very good non-league goalkeeper. It's a bit like the question of how tall do you have to be a goalie? You just have to be a good goalie. And as a coach, you just have to be a good coach and dedicated and learn and be prepared to open up and accept ideas and just work for the goalie rather than working for your own ends, you know. It's so the answer to that is no, you don't have to have played at the top level to be a top level coach. But opportunity is also a massive factor for someone that's, you know, trying to make their way in the game. You know, you need opportunity, and when opportunities come, you need to grasp them, and that's not always easy if you've got to give up a decent paying job to take a lower paid job to get on in the coaching world, you know.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much, Tony.
Welcome.
Do we have any more questions? What we'll say is, I know we're what we are now. We're just over an hour. She'll say one more question. So if anybody's got another question, we'll take that as the last one. Let's have a look. Right. So what we'll do, it doesn't look like we've got any more. So Tony, I'll just ask, just if you could, if we'll just finish this on you being able to give any advice to the goalkeepers here.
I think at your age that you are, just keep enjoying the game. You've got to, at the end of your next game, you've got to want to go back the following week and play again. Different world nowadays to when I was your age, but I played for the school, I played for a club, I played with my friends, I liked playing with, I had an older brother, his mates were always playing football. It's just the love of the game. And what I would say is, by being on this screen tonight tells me that you love your football. And just make sure you go out with a smile on your face. It's the best way to be. Just keep enjoying it.
Excellent. Tony, it's been an absolute pleasure.
My pleasure. Good luck to all of you in your careers. I hope it goes well.